that starts at 6 and skips 5 here. Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to the Unlock Your Freedom podcast with Kevin Keppel. Man, super pumped to connect with Grant Baldwin today. Grant, what's up, man?
Kevin, thanks for letting me hang out with you, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, man, I appreciate you being on here. I'm excited to learn about you and all the brilliance the Speaker Lab brings to the world. Could you kick us off with a little bit of who you be and how you serve, or who you serve?
Yeah. So I run the Speaker Lab, which is a training company and coaching company for public speakers. So we work with speakers who, for the most part, are getting started and trying to figure out who they speak to, what they speak about, how do you find opportunities, what do you speak about, how much do you charge, and like how does this mysterious speaking world work? And so that was kind of my own story. As I was actually way back in time, I was a youth pastor, had gone to Bible college, had a lot of opportunities to speak, and wanted to do more of it. I just didn't know like how does this world work? And so at the time when I was getting started, probably 16, 17 years ago or so, there wasn't any podcasts, weren't books or resources on the speaking industry. So it was a matter of just kind of emailing a bunch of speakers and stalking them and harassing them and asking if I could pick their brain, that sort of thing, and learned a couple of things and built a good business doing that, and got to a point where I was doing about 60, 70 gigs a year all over primarily the US, and absolutely loved it. And just had a lot of people who are asking me like, hey, I want to be a speaker. What do I need to do? How do I do that? And so that's when we started the Speaker Lab, and that's the core of what we do today.
So when you get asked that question for the 1 millionth time, right? How do I get started as a speaker? What's the response sound like?
Yeah. So we've got what we teach inside of our training programs is what we call the Speaker Success Roadmap. It makes the acronym SPEAK, SPEAK. So if you want, I'll go through kind of at a high level that, and we can jump in wherever you want. So the S is select a problem to solve. So you got to get really, really clear on two things. Who do you speak to and what problem do you solve? The mistake that a lot of speakers make is we just enjoy speaking. And so who do we speak to? I don't know, man. I speak to people. I speak to humans. My message is for everybody. It's like, yeah, okay. And what do you speak about? It's like, well, what do you want me to speak about? I can speak about anything. I can talk about family or business or podcasting or, entrepreneurship or marriage, or it's just like, you don't want to do that. You don't want to try to be all things to all people. So you have to first start by getting really, really clear on, I solve one specific problem for one specific audience. So a way we like to think of it is you want to be the steakhouse and not the buffet. The steakhouse, not the buffet. Meaning, Kevin, if you and I were going to grab a bite to eat, we were looking for a good steak. Like we have a choice. Like we could go to a buffet where steak is one of 100 things that they offer and they're all mediocre. Or we could go to a steakhouse where they do one thing, but they do that one thing really, really well. They don't do pasta. They don't do seafood. They don't do tacos. They do steak, and that's it. And again, it's counterintuitive because as speakers, we think that the more audiences we can speak to, the more people we can connect with, the more topics we can cover, the more opportunities we will have. But that's not what event planners are looking for. They're looking for a steakhouse, not a buffet. So first part of the process, again, you have to solve one specific problem for one specific audience. The next part, P, is to prepare your talk. So be really, really clear on what's the solution that you are providing and how you're going to go about providing that. Are you going to do keynotes or workshops or breakouts or seminars or large group stuff, small group stuff over a couple of days, over a short period, virtual, in person? There's a lot of options and that we can dig into as well. The E is to establish yourself as the expert. So 2 key marketing tools every speaker needs. You need a website and a demo video. So in this day and age, if you don't have a website, you don't exist. People won't take you seriously. And the other part is a demo video. So a demo video, think of it kind of like a movie trailer. You take a 90-minute movie, a 2-hour movie, they'll boil it down to 2 or 3 minutes. And within those 2 or 3 minutes, you have an idea of who's in it, what's the plot, what's the theme. And the goal of the demo video and the goal of the movie trailer is to make people want to see more. And so that's what you're trying to do is remember that event planners, decision makers, people who are considering hiring you, they are in the risk mitigation business, meaning that before they're willing to put you up on stage, they're putting their butt on the line. So, because if you show up, you do a great job, they look like the hero. If you show up and you say something, inappropriate, stupid, dumb, crass, whatever it may be, the decision maker looks bad. And so they want to minimize that risk. So they don't need to see your entire talk, but they need to see a couple minutes just to kind of get a sense of like, is this person a good fit for our event? And especially if we're going to pay them to come speak. So the demo video is really important. So that's the E. The A is to acquire paid speaking gigs. Now, this is the part that people oftentimes want to fast forward to. Grant, just tell me how to book gigs. Or we assume, okay, I got my website, I got my video, and I'm clear on who I speak to. I'm clear on what the solution is I provide. Now I just sit back and I wait for the phone to ring. And like, it just doesn't work like that. You have to be proactive and having a system in place to be able to consistently find and book gigs. And then the last part of the process, K, is know when to scale, meaning a lot of people who are interested in speaking are also interested in courses or coaching or consulting or books or podcasting. And so we always say you can do all the things, but you can't do all the things at once, meaning something's going to come first, something's going to come last. So you've got to be clear about how speaking kind of fits into the mix of that. So again, kind of high level overview. That's the Speak framework, the Speaker Success Roadmap that we teach our speakers and our programs on how do you get started as a speaker.
Wow, that's pretty powerful. I mean, that's a cheat sheet on how to skip about 2 years of wasted time right there, you guys, if not more. That was like, he said it so simply, but that's because he's a master at what he does. That was like a super complex topic broken down into like a very understandable thing. Like, that's phenomenal. So really cool. So I'm going to make an assumption here, which is always dangerous, but are all those types of things which I'll do in the speaker lab with your clients?
Yeah. So everything we did, or we just kind of walked through there. One of the things we always say is it's simple, but it's not easy, so you can take everything we just walked through and you can go implement and apply it. The challenge is you just start to run into, obstacles and like, okay, but what about this? Or what do I do in this situation? Or a client just asked me this and I'm not really sure what to do now. And what all should be on my website? And how long should my demo video be? And like, just all these, like, just normal questions that we just run into. And so that's where, we work with students through our training and coaching programs just to help get into the weeds on whether you want to speak 5 times a year and get paid, or you want to speak 50 times a year. We have speakers who do both. And so we help understand the ins and outs of the speaking business. The other thing that we found is the expression, it's hard to read the label from inside the jar, meaning it's easy oftentimes for us to identify, what someone else should do in their situation or in their challenge or in their business or in their obstacle. But it's difficult for us to see that in our own business. And so oftentimes we see a big challenge, especially in that first part, the S, selecting a problem to solve, is speakers have a really difficult time narrowing that down because there's all these different options. I know that I shouldn't be the buffet, but all these different things I could do, and I can't pick just one. So I'm going to try to do them all. And so being able to like walk alongside and say, no, you can't do them all. Let's narrow it down and let's talk through the kind of the pros and cons of each one. The other thing is like you're picking a starting point. You're not picking a permanent point. You're not getting a tattoo or anything like that. We're just saying, hey, let's get the ball rolling, because most speakers over the course of their careers, they're going to speak to a variety of different types of audiences on a variety of different types of topics. But to start with, let's just pick something to get the ball rolling versus, again, trying to be all things to all people, which just doesn't work.
It's so hard. I mean, and not just speaking in anything. It's like, so many coaches that are, different types of business owners I've worked with, like, like, who do you want to serve? Like, well, I can help everybody. And it just like totally dilutes your power, when you do that. And it's incredibly exhausting because so often, like you said earlier, people are trying to be everything to everyone on every platform. It's like, I'm on TikTok, I'm on stuff I've never even heard of, and like doing stuff that I don't want to be doing. And like, cool. Are you profitable? Like, well, I'm not making any money. So
let me give you another analogy, because again, we understand this in other contexts, but for some reason, like when we talk about steakhouse buffet, like people are like, okay, I get that, but for some reason we think it doesn't apply to us for whatever reason. And so here's another way to think about this. Let's imagine that, Kevin, God forbid, you had a brain issue and you needed to have brain surgery. Okay, you have a choice. You could go to your local family medical doctor. They are a doctor. They went to medical school. They probably know more about the brain than you or I do. They probably have done some surgeries before, but they've never done brain surgery. Versus going to a brain surgeon where day in and day out, this is all that they do. If you got a broken leg, you don't go to them. If you got a bad cough, you don't go to them. You got a sore throat, you got COVID, you don't go to them. But if you got a brain issue, that's the doctor that you go to. And so we get it whenever it comes to that actually being a specialist versus a generalist is actually much more powerful and much more effective in the marketplace. But it's tough to narrow it down. I could be, I can cook steak, but there's all these other things I want to do. And, I could do brain surgery, but there's all these other things but like you're making a conscious choice of saying, no, I'm going to be really, really, really good at this specific thing versus trying to be all things for all people.
Yeah, that's such brilliant advice. And, my financial planner is kind of the same thing. She broke it down like that pretty much almost exactly, when we first met. She's like, hey, I'm really good at this, and if you want this, you need to go find somebody who's really good at that.
Yep.
And like, if I'm good at everything, that's, I'm generally okay, right? Nobody's going to be a master if I'm trying to be all things to everyone.
Totally.
So can we talk about, the big kind of elephant in the room these days with, everything going virtual? And
Mm-hmm.
so, like, what's the difference, between virtual speaking as opposed to on stage speaking when, it comes to how you guys help people be more?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, pre-pandemic, virtual speaking wasn't really a thing. It was something that some speakers did and some event planners did, but it just wasn't anything that anybody really took seriously.
Right. It's kind
And
of
then
weird, right?
yeah, it was just kind of like, yeah, like what's the point of it? Like, let's
Yeah.
just do in-person events. Well, then the pandemic hits, and like all in-person events just literally come to a screeching halt. And it was just, obviously the world was dramatically affected, but certainly the speaking industry, where live events just stopped and no end in sight of when they're going to reopen or what some sense of normalcy was going to be at the time. And so then it was pretty quickly like, okay, everybody's going to Zoom, everybody's going to virtual. And so virtual becomes the only game in town and the only option. What we had predicted and what we have seen kind of play out is that now that we are back to some sense of normalcy, that live events have really come back, but they have not come back in replacement of virtual speaking engagements, but they have come back in addition to, because at this point now the entire marketplace sees virtual as a viable option. And so what we've seen is you have in-person events that are doing amazing right now, and you also see virtual opportunities that are amazing right now. And a lot of times actually what we're seeing is a hybrid of both, where a speaker may, for example, maybe they go in and they do a live in-person for, a kickoff for a conference or something. And then maybe for the next 3 months afterwards, they do like a monthly Zoom follow-up for attendees or for a sales team or for whatever it may be. And so it gives you opportunities to do both. It's a good chance for speakers to kind of package together some of what they do or to upsell. It's kind of like, if you go to Chick-fil-A, you can get just the sandwich, but if you can get the sandwich plus fries plus a drink and supersize it and upsize it, like it starts to increase some value. So as a speaker, if you can say, hey, I can come in and do just a keynote, but what if I came in and I did a keynote and then for the next couple of months, I do a follow-up virtually with your team to help implement and apply what it is that we just talked about. So again, the pandemic has actually ended up being a really, really good thing for the speaking industry. It's opened up a lot of opportunities that didn't previously exist.
Yeah, well, I know it makes me a lot more efficient when it's, I can just turn on my laptop and, speak into the camera instead of, driving across the town or, get on planes, which sounds like you spent a lot of time doing that in the beginning, kind of building your business, 60 to 70, speaking engagements a year. I'm sure they weren't all next door to your house, unfortunately, right? So.
Yeah. And there's pros and cons with it both ways, meaning that there is, whenever you're doing virtual gigs, like you said, you're able to be home. You are able to, I would always kind of judge a speaking gig by how many sleeps am I gone? And the fewer sleeps I'm gone, or if I can do a gig and sleep in my own bed, that's a huge win. When you're doing a virtual gig, you're able to speak to a bunch of different audiences in the same day, all over the world, right? So there's certainly some upsides there. Typically, speaking fees for virtual are going to be lower than what they would be for in-person. The other side of it is their Zoom fatigue is a very real thing, and it's I think oftentimes more challenging to connect with a virtual audience versus an in-person audience. If we were recording this and we were in the same room and hanging out with each other, it's just a different dynamic than if we are, in two different states talking over our computers, sitting in empty rooms, basically talking to screens. It's just different. So it's not necessarily that, again, one's better or worse than the other, but again, because of the pandemic, it created amazing virtual opportunities. And so one of our core training programs, we have one of our most successful students. He makes several $100,000 a year from speaking. He does a ton of virtual. And so all he does is teach students within our programs of exactly what he's doing like right now to book a gig. And so he's in the trenches, in the weeds with speakers. And so showing like, hey, if you just wanted to do virtual, that's fine. That's certainly a viable option. And so he works with our speakers to show exactly what's working today at this moment for finding and booking virtual gigs.
Man, I think that's really cool. I'm glad you touched on that, because I'm sure you've worked with a ton of coaches and, been in masterminds and all that good stuff before. And it's a little challenging when you walk in and there's one way to win. It's like, no, this is what you do here. Like, you win this way. And like, okay, that's great if it lines up with, what I'm looking for, who I be. But, I think it sounds like you guys have, it's more about, what are you looking for? And that's kind of how you help people create the success they want to go towards. Is that accurate?
Yeah. Whenever it comes to speaking, there's not necessarily a one size fits all. Meaning, like, again, some people want to do 50 gigs a year. Some people want to do 5 gigs a year. Some people want to do only virtual. Some people want to do only in person. Some people would say, you're in Dallas. You say, hey, I just want to do gigs in the Dallas metro area. I just want to do things in Texas. I just don't want to travel much. That's fine. Like, you get to design the rules to the game and what makes sense for you. And that's going to look different for everyone. Another example I'll give you is the speaking format, meaning that I feel like for me personally, I do a really good job in like a 1 hour slot. So a keynote, a workshop, that sort of thing. I'm really good at for a 1 hour. Beyond that, I don't enjoy, so the idea of doing like, let's do 3 days with a group of 30 people and really go deep in the weeds. For some people are like, yeah, like, where do I sign up for that? That sounds awesome. For me, I'm just like, boy, that sounds miserable. Right. And again, it's not that one's better or worse than the other. There's pros and cons with both of them. But as a speaker, like, you get to decide like what makes the most sense for you and where, you feel like you can best help an audience.
Yeah. And man, an hour is a long time too. You can cover so much ground in that, especially, you speak pretty quickly and, you're pretty good at making things simple, like I said earlier. And so, it's like people are like, man, you want an hour and a half? When I've had a speaking opportunity, I'm like, man, I don't really know what I'm going to talk about for that long because
Sure.
I think I'm going to bore myself. But, like some people, like, well, one of my friends is in operations. Like, he could talk for 3 weeks straight and be so excited to go for more. And I'm like, man, I fell asleep at the beginning. I don't even know what happened, but I think that's a brilliant point you brought up. So can we talk like maybe a little more technical for a second? Like, what makes a great speaker?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I think one of the things that is great about speaking is there's certainly some commonalities of what makes a great speaker, but there's also like a level of subjectivity. Okay, so think about it similar to movies, music, shows. There's going to be music that like, not everybody's going to agree on what makes great music. There's going to be some band or artist that someone hears and they're like, that was amazing, and someone else like, that's crap. It's not necessarily like someone's right or wrong. And I think a big misconception, especially when it comes to speakers, is in order to be a successful speaker, you have to have like this, you have to be this crazy extrovert, this life of the party, larger than life personality, super charismatic, bouncing around the stage. And like, are there those type of speakers? Sure, absolutely. They fit that stereotype. But there's also speakers that are very soft-spoken, they're quiet, they're more introverted. And it's not that, again, one's better or worse than the other. Like, different speakers are going to connect with different audiences. I think that a couple things that any speaker can do is, one, be really, really genuine and authentic to yourself and who you are as a speaker. So it's important to remember that as a speaker, you are one human talking to a collection of other humans in an audience. So act like a human, be yourself. And everybody has a pretty good BS meter of going like, is this person really like this? Or are they trying to be something that they're not? They're trying to be a caricature of a speaker or what they think a speaker is supposed to be, versus what I hope is like when I speak and then when I interact with people, they're like, he's the same dude, he's the same guy. And whether we're doing a podcast or speaking in front of 1,000 people or sitting down for coffee with someone, I want people to feel like there's not like this dramatic difference. When you're on stage, you certainly want to be like it's like a bigger version of yourself, especially depending on the size of the audience or the size of the room. But other things that you can be doing, another thing would be making sure that you really spend the time to be prepared. I think that the best speakers on the planet, they don't just like scribble some notes on a napkin and like, I'm just going to hop up and wing it and see what happens. Like, that just doesn't work. Like, they really spend the time to practice, rehearse, go over it time and time and time again, so that by the time they get up, it may look like they're just winging it, but they've really spent the time behind the scenes to make sure that they are prepared and ready to go. Another simple thing is to tell stories, tell a lot of stories, a lot of analogies, a lot of illustrations. People love stories. And so, Kevin, if I said right now, hey, let me tell you a quick story, for the audience right now, they're immediately like, okay, I have no idea where this is going. Is this going to be funny? Is this going to be sad? Is this going to be depressing? Is this going to be inspirational? Is this going to make any sense? I have no clue, but it's a story, so I'm in. people love stories, and I like to tell first person stories, things that have actually happened to me, and I also like to use a lot of illustrations to connect the dots. So it's when we talk about, brain surgeons versus regular doctors, steakhouses versus buffets, and like these illustrations to try to like connect the dots, versus just like, spew information, which it can be hard to connect the dots with an audience. So those would be a few things: be authentic, genuine to yourself, be who you are, make sure that you spend the time to be prepared, and make sure that you tell a lot of stories.
Yeah, and I think like obviously they all work together so well too, because like being authentic is crucial in anything. Because if you're not authentic, people, like you said, they can feel that, and
Sure.
they're not gonna trust you. And if I don't trust you, I definitely don't feel connected, and I don't really understand your mission or care about it.
Yeah.
And I was just laughing to myself when you were talking about, seeing people on stage, and, everybody loves to play the comparison game, right? And like, could I do that? Like whatever they're
Yeah.
doing.
Yeah.
And, I was at a conference once, and the speaker there, and this guy was wild. Like he started doing handstand push-ups on the lectern. He's like riding a unicycle and juggling. And I
Yeah.
remember I was like, I can't ride a unicycle. I was like, I can juggle, but I definitely can't do that handstand push-up like you just did. And I'm like, dude, I don't want to do any of that stuff,
Yeah.
And like, that definitely wouldn't be authentic to me. And I mean, I don't know if it was him or not, but if it is, man, he's a high energy fellow for sure. So
Yeah. And that's fine. Again, there's nothing wrong with that. But I think, especially early on, I think it's easy for speakers to see other speakers on stage and think, oh, that worked for them, therefore I need to incorporate that into my talk or my next presentation, and it'll work for me. And that's a bad way to do it. Versus saying, like, who am I? What kind of speaker and communicator do I want to be? And how can I best connect with and resonate with an audience?
yeah, absolutely. So when it comes to clients and the people that y'all bring into the speaker lab, what are your favorite types of people to work with?
I mean, we work with a large variety of different speakers. And so we've got speakers that we've worked with in every US state and in 49 different countries, all different ages, subjects, topics. It's just a really, really wide range. And so one of the things that I think the type of speaker we enjoy most is speakers that are going to do the work, honestly. And so if you're coming in going, hey, I'm ready to buckle down, because if you just come in and you're just like, I'm just going to kind of go through the motions and dab with this and kick the tires and, kind of half in, half out, like you're not going to get the results that you're looking for. And so you have to treat this like anything else. You get in, you get out of it what you put into it. And so doing the work, if you do the work, we can show you exactly what you need to be doing to get the results that you desire. So yeah, I think that the big thing is speakers that want to come in, who are committed and ready to do the work. They'll see results for sure.
So maybe asking the same question a different way, but how does somebody know they're ready to engage with you?
Yeah. If you are someone who maybe you've done some speaking before and again, you're kind of like, I'd love to get paid to do this. Maybe I've been paid a time or two. Maybe I've never been paid at all, but it seems like this is a viable thing. I've had some good feedback from people that are like, oh, you should be a speaker. You should share your story or whatever. All that's well and good. And again, you can like, we've got the Speaker Lab podcast has 400 episodes there that you can go listen to. We had a guy I talked to just recently. He said, I went back, I listened to every single episode and I applied it and I did what you said. And he's killing it. He's making 6 figures a year from speaking just by listening to a free podcast. So you can certainly do that. We've got a book called The Successful Speaker, 5 Steps for Getting Paid, Building Your Platform, Sharing Your Message. But so you can read that and go through it. But if you're like, okay, I really want some in-depth coaching, help, support, I want someone to hold my hand, show me what to do, then that's where our training programs really come in.
Yeah. So basically, if you're ready to add some jet fuel to what you're doing and get where you're going faster, come find the Speaker Lab.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, cool. Let's do this, man. An effort to bring this thing in for a landing. I got a couple of quick questions here at the end, and you just give me a quick answer and send you on your way. What would be your best piece of mindset advice for a new speaker?
Best piece of advice, I would say, think long term. I think oftentimes we are just trying to set ourselves up for a false expectation of success overnight, and it just doesn't work like that. So I'll give you an example. So we're recording this, summer 2022. I got an email invite just a couple days ago from a from a potential client, and they said, "Hey, we wanted to have you come speak." And so in the form that we have, those kind of inquiries when they fill it out, one of the questions is, "How did you hear about Grant?" And they said, "I was a student in an audience, and I saw you speak back in 2008." This is 14, 15 years ago. And now they are, at a different company, organization, group, whatever. And at the time, they were a high school student at a conference that I had spoke at. And now they're, they're obviously in their professional career. And so having a long-term expectation. Now, does that mean that you need to be in this for 15, 20 years to have any level of success? No, absolutely not. But know that if you're just like, I'm just going to kind of dabble in this and see if I can get a gig here or there, it's just hard to build any momentum. Again, that's not exclusive with just speaking. That's anything, whether you want to do a podcast or start a business or, get in shape or whatever it may be. Like having a long-term focus, a long-term commitment definitely makes a big difference.
Yeah, that's powerful. What's something in your life, Grant, that's non-negotiable?
My family. I love speaking. I love entrepreneurship. I love the team that we work with. But my most important roles are being a good husband and being a good father. So I'm married to my high school sweetheart. We just celebrated our 20-year anniversary. Been together 25 years. We got 3 girls, and it's the best. I love what I do, but I don't want to do it at the detriment of being a good husband and being a good dad. So that's absolutely 1,000% non-negotiable for me.
Man, very cool. What's a favorite book to read, recommend, give away?
I'm biased, and I'll give you my own book, The Successful Speaker. Another one I really like is a book called Rework by Jason Fried, and he's one of the founders of a company, Basecamp, and I think just the way that they think about business, they approach business, I really resonate with. I really enjoy. They just kind of have some contrarian, unconventional views to business, and you don't have to kill yourself to build some successful startup or anything like that. But so a lot of their thoughts. The book is an easy read. It's short. It's like probably 50 short chapters, 3-4 page chapters, and so that's one I'm a big fan of.
Yeah, that is a really good book. I've read that. I was actually on Basecamp a little earlier today.
Nice,
but definitely check out Grant's book. He mentioned earlier, there's 5 tips in there that'll send you on your way too. What's one message, if you could get it out to everybody in the world, that you'd love to have them hear?
Yeah, I think kind of similar to the family thing. I talk a lot about who you are is more important than what you do. Who you are is more important than what you do. Meaning, Kevin, if you and I are great, entrepreneurs, business owners, podcasters, but if we drop the ball as husbands, as dads, as moms, as wives, as sons, daughters, friends, if we're a shell of a human being, we're doing something wrong. And so I tell our team that regularly, that your role within the Speaker Lab is super important, but I care more about who you are as a human being and what your life is like outside of this world. And so, yeah, I'd say that's a big deal that I hope we communicate to people, is who you are is more important than what you do.
Yeah, and I think pretty much everything that you've said today has flowed from, that idea of being authentic to who you are. And that's really, it's pretty powerful. What does freedom mean to you, Grant?
I think freedom means flexibility, options, autonomy. It's a big thing that I've really, I think, built intentionally my life around. I'll give you a couple of examples. So I've been self-employed for about 15 years now. So I haven't got a W-2 paycheck from anyone in quite a while now.
The boss is great too, right? So
do I?
The boss is great too, right? When you're self-employed.
Yeah, very much so. Most days. And so I've always been intentional about building the business in a way where it supports my life, not my life supporting the business. My wife homeschools our daughters, and so she's been homeschooling them for about 10 years or so. And so we really, really, really value freedom, flexibility, autonomy. We like to travel, have different experiences. And so being able to do those versus being, trapped in a 9-to-5, both for us in terms of work, but even for the kids. Like I don't want our lives to be dictated by the school calendar. And so, freedom is a huge, huge part of our lives. And we've had a lot of intentionality in building life around that.
All righty. Last question. Where can people go to learn more about you and engage with you?
Yeah, everything we do is over at thespeakerlab.com. So again, we got a podcast by the same name, the Speaker Lab Podcast, the book, The Successful Speaker. And so, yeah, lots of resources out there to help speakers however we can.
Beautiful. And we'll put that in the show notes, of course, for you guys. So I would highly recommend you go check out Grant. Somebody recommended Grant to me years ago, and I've been a fan from afar. So it was cool to get to see you in person. And I'm really grateful that you took the time to share with us, because, that's what it's all about, giving it away, whatever it is, our genius is. And it's definitely you living in your genius, talking about this and serving people with, your message. So thanks for being here, man. Give us a parting shot. We'll get out of here.
Man, I appreciate you letting me hang out with you. So again, it's I listen to a lot of podcasts myself, so it's one thing to listen to them, it's something else to do something with it. So I'd encourage anyone and everyone listening to take something, anything that we covered and talked about here, do something with it, apply it, implement it, and go make it happen.
Well said. Well, thanks again for being here. Everybody, thanks for listening. We'll see y'all next time.